Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I'm a comic book artist, writer, creator, self publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you'd like to get bonus live streams twice a month, access to a Patreon exclusive Discord server where we share process, tips, feedback, art tools, and general conversation, and if you would like to be able to read my comics on an online digital archive, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month at patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated gifts delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what is inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you would like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Comixology or Kindle, you can head on over to amazon.jeremy.net. That'll forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can pick up my most recent comic book series, Morning Star. It tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8, the conclusion of the series. Both books have script excerpts, extensive back matter, character sketches, page thumbnails, photo reference, all that more. I basically show you how to put the entire comic book together. You can check all these out at amazon.jeremy.net. And there are book flip-throughs on the homepage of my YouTube channels. If you want to see what the insides of the books are before buying, you can head over there and check it out. There's links in the description for this video on YouTube and should be on most platforms. And if you're watching on Twitch, there are links. There's a link to my link tree in the About tab. And as I mentioned at the top for Patreon, we're going to have our Patreon exclusive art book study group tomorrow night. We're going to do it on Monday. It'll be 7:30 Pacific Standard Time. And those live streams are, as opposed to these normal ones, which run an hour, hour and a half. The art book study groups run 2.5, 3 hours long. So we do in-depth studies on some of the best art books around, try to suck out all the knowledge we can. And the archive of all those videos is also available for Patreon subscribers. So if you want to get access to that, you can hop on, subscribe right now, watch the new one tomorrow, and you can watch all of the previous ones. So yeah, that's it, and let's get into it. See, Byron's. We already got a full house. Byron's in the chat. James is here. Definitely said, I always appreciate the thumbs up there. He said sign up for that newsletter and enjoyed Eye of the Gods. I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you. Greatly appreciate it. King's Little Fitness said what's good. Said had to send a tweet to self. All right. Folks are already rolling in. Let's get started. What do we have on the deck today? More Medusa. I made a little bit of progress on this piece. One of the things that I changed here is I originally had it where first off, a lot more scales. That's mostly what I've been doing over the past week, painting scales. And like you guys have seen in other Medusa videos where I created scale brushes. And what's crazy is I spent all the time testing, making different brushes, making an entire piece with scale brushes, only to find that I really do prefer the results when I go in by hand and just draw each individual scale. I don't know why. I know it makes more sense to just have a brush that does it for you, but I just didn't like the results. So obviously I'm not above, using something that's going to simplify my workflow. And it'd be really nice if I could just swipe down with the brush and it just gave me the exact pattern I wanted. It just didn't come out that way. I'm not abandoning that. I may come back to it. I may try to create more brushes that simulate more of the effect that I did get on these brushes, on this piece. And if I can find a brush that does that, then hey, we're money. The other change that I made was I originally had it so that the background was the darkest region. Then the foreground was slightly lighter. I mean, the area with the Gorgon coming out of this pool of snakes was slightly lighter, and then the lightest region was the foreground region. And upon looking and just thinking about it, the fact that the Gorgon is the focal point of it, I thought it might make more sense to put the lightest region in the middle and then have a very dark background and a slightly dark foreground, and have the midground be the lightest area. And mind you, all this is going to change when I start putting color on there, and I may very much play with the value scale. So a lot of this whole grayscale drawing is to establish my base values. I may end up blowing out the color scheme quite a bit once I start laying color on top of this. King's Low Fitness says, my eyes look like that when I woke up. That's one of those, like, you raising up out of that pool of six, just like, what? Just what? What's going on? What you really? You need me now? All right, well, it's gonna cost you. Byron says, in all honesty, most texture brushes don't have that same feel. Unless you go the extra mile with tilt specificity, it's usually better to do it by hand. Yeah, it's very challenging because I think texture brushes work really well when you are texturing materials on a large surface, like the side of a building, a landscape, like the steel on a car, various, whether organic or inorganic materials, just when it's a large surface area. But when it's something, well, that's not true, because I would say that you can also use a good texture brush for skin tone. But I think the way that the textures are applied is more like you lay the texture over the entire surface, and then you slowly will airbrush out the places where you want to conceal it or have it be in a lower opacity versus the places where you want it to be prominent. Whereas with serpents, it's because it's not a flat texture on a surface that's mostly facing the same direction. It's because it's constantly changing direction. That, to me, is the reason why I find it difficult. But I definitely don't think it's impossible, because one of my favorite artists is an illustrator named Stepan Sejic, and I think I've mentioned him before. He does Sunstone, which it's his own self-published comic, but they publish it. The publisher he worked with is Top Cow. He's done a lot of work for Top Cow, Aphrodite 9. He's also done a lot of work for DC and continues to do covers for them. But he does a great job of integrating textures, digital textures, into his artwork. Whether it's drag, in fact, I should actually go back and look at his dragon comic Ravine, because obviously there's scales in that. But whether he's doing stuff with giant mech, like Gundam style mech, or dragons, or just people's armor, he does a great job of making very intricate textures. You can tell that it's digital, but it flows so seamlessly with his artwork that it's not distracting. It's an enhancement as opposed to a distraction. And so I know it's possible. I just haven't figured out how to do it yet. Meanwhile, let's get in here. And I'm going to be doing a lot more of the same of what I was doing before, which is just, oh wait, I got to adjust my brushes. I was working on a different piece. With a different canvas size, like a different pixel size. So my brushes were back to being, we're much smaller. Point being, I just need to tweak my brushes and get them where I want for this piece. So this actual live stream would probably be a good one for questions if people have any, because a lot of what I'm going to be doing is just what you're seeing me do right now for the next 50 minutes. It's just going to be me, drawing scales, maybe erasing some, realizing patterns aren't working. Like, there's already a couple of places here I'm going to have to go back and look, because I remember when I left off, there was a section I did that I was not happy with and wanted to do again. But it's really going to be a lot of this. So I will try to keep an eye on the chat as I go. Let's see here. Virus is undulating tubes of flesh. Um, I think you can find that on the internet. um, Kingslow Fitness says, "What's that artist's name again? Who specializes in texture?" Um, Here, let me see, because I'm on his Patreon. Let me bring up his name. Nope, that's not it. Because his name is a little difficult to spell, so it's easier for me to just bring it up. Let's see here. We switch to my patron account of the people that I'm following. Ah, that's right here. Yes. So that is his name. Whoop. What? Why is this zooming out weird? Go to the top here. Yeah, Stepan Sejic. So he's an amazing artist. Love his work. And he gave away a lot of the early pages of Sunstone on DeviantArt for free. And I was like, I need to kick this dude down just because he gave so many great stories, so much great artwork on there. I was like, I just wanted to support him just because I was enjoying his work and wanted to, you know, wanted to pay it back, say thank you. Um, and he continues to share a lot of great content on there. So he's definitely worth checking out. But if you just look him up online, or even if you go to his, if you look him up on DeviantArt, I think he still posts there, and you can see a lot of the examples of the artwork where he's blending digital textures that are repeating, like a repeating texture brush, and he's using that to describe armor, scales, um, all variety of textures. Like I think he did a run. I don't know if he did a run the interiors or Aquaman or whether he just did the cover. But like a lot of the textures in that run, you can see him, you know, using textures to great effect. So he's very definitely worth checking out. I personally love his personal work. Personal twice in the same sentence. I enjoy his personal work more. Sunstone, Death Vigil. See, he's got a wide variety of series that he has there on his Patreon. So I'm plugging someone else's Patreon there. Let's get back to this. Oh, hey, Mercidian Merchant in the chat. Nice to see you. Meow. Welcome. Hey, I see that you made the that I forgot the cute name of it, but the sheep I can't remember if it was a sheep succubus, but the character that you shared with me, you sent the link. I see you made that your icon now. I like that. That looks really cool. Um, let's see here. Kingslow Fitness said first Google search went to DeviantArt. Yeah, definitely check out his DeviantArt page. Let's see here. The interesting thing about doing textures like this is that this is really, even though I'm just doing dots and slashes, this is kind of the same thing as doing a rendering ball exercise where you draw a sphere and then you just shade it so that it feels like the light is coming from a specific direction. This is almost the exact same exercise, except I'm just doing it with the little dots and lines. But it's just indicating a transition from the plane that is facing you or the surface that's facing you to the surface turning away. What's funny is people will sometimes ask me questions about cross hatching, which I don't really think of myself as somebody who does a lot of cross hatching in my artwork. But technically, that's, even though it's not cross hatching, I'm still using hatching to a certain degree in terms of drawing all of these scales. And the thing that I think, the concept that I think might be challenging for some people when they're approaching hatching is that they're concerned with the lines and how to make a pleasing pattern. And that's not what you should be concerned with when you're doing cross hatching. What you should be concerned with is how the hatching expresses the shape of the underlying form. The surfaces that are facing towards the light, the surfaces that are facing away from the light, the surfaces that are the most important part, I think, of any of these are is the parts of a form that are actively turning. So not a form that is, where's my cube? Where is my cube? Well, it's around here. So, oh, there it is. Big Jeremy mode for a minute. Whether it's cross hatching or drawing with a or just shading with a soft brush, I'd say the most important parts are not just the surface that's facing towards the light or the surface facing away from the light. It's a surface that is hard to tell because the lights are pretty blown out here. Let me see if I turn this off. That's still pretty blown out. There, that's a little bit better. Still pretty bright in here. It's the surfaces that are turning away from the light. And even this, as you can see, there's a band. So it just goes from light to dark. Let me see. Maybe if I put my hand covering it. But the areas where a surface is actually gradually turning from one to the other, those are the areas where the hatching becomes really effective because it's expressing the idea that the form is moving from facing the light to neutral to facing directly away from the light. And those are the places where hatching is incredibly critical, and those are the things that you need to understand in order to do cross hatching. And most people are just thinking about the lines, or thinking about the hatching. They're not thinking about what the hatching describes. And what the hatching describes is the most important part of cross hatching. So while I am not technically cross hatching here, I'm describing light on a form, and that's the underlying concept of cross hatching. Let's see here. And Kingslow Fitness says, so texture is repetitious. Well, it can be, but I prefer to think of it as meditative. First off, if it really is like draining and boring, that goes back to the conversation that we were having at the start about using brushes to express texture or just pasting a texture into a document versus drawing all the textures. There are technical ways to express the work if you find it tedious. If you That depends. I mean, it's repetitious, yes, but repetitious doesn't have to be a negative thing. But one is looking for technical tools to make it less repetitious, and the other thing is, personally, when I'm doing this is extremely relaxing for me. Um, a lot like inking. Inking is my absolute favorite part of making comics because I just get lost in the joy of making lines. And when I'm drawing a pattern or a texture, For this, for me, this is not at all tedious. This is very enjoyable. This is my if I didn't like this, first off, I one of the whole reason why I went into trying to come up with brushes is so that I could just put a little bit. My original goal was just to texture right around the head. Like if I turn this layer off, you can see I did draw scales around the head, but then I decided to leave the rest for doing it in tone. I think that it would have become a bit more tedious if I had to do this in line, only because I would need to be more accurate. Whereas when you're doing it with tone or color, you can just sort of splash the lines in there and let it be. Now, that said, just as a gag, let's see what happens if I turn this to black. Go to hue saturation. I'm curious what it looks like if these are black lines. Woo! Yeah, I mean, it's still a pattern and it still feels like what I drew, but it's so overpowering. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to do it in tone. It's very overpowering. But that said, I could have done this in all black. Um, Done this in my digital inking stage. I am glad I chose not to, but let's say that I'm doing some originals. Maybe I want to do some small ink drawings to sell on my website. I know that I can use this approach, and maybe with this approach, you know what? Where is that? There we go. Cancel. What if I were to, now I'm just playing, I'm just experimenting with stuff. What would happen if I were to put a layer in here, fill this layer with white? Well, I mean, to be honest, I don't even really need to do that experiment in terms of adjusting, changing the color, because believe it or not, that gray that I was using is so dark that it pretty much looks like black when you compare it to white. But if I were doing this just on regular paper, or even if I were doing it on a toned light paper, I could still get that same effect that I'm doing while not being as precise. So it might be interesting. It might be fun. I mean, I've been thinking about wanting to do more original physical art to sell, because I don't usually take on commissions. And this is one of the things I was thinking about. It's just taking some of the pieces I'm doing and just drawing a little Medusa head here, weird creature there, and just doing those in ink. And the nice thing about this is I've got, with this layer on, I can just come in here and catch little stray pixels that happen sometimes. All right, so that white layer was just to play with. I don't need that. And actually, it just reminded me there's another layer on here I can delete, because, let's see here, there's this. Oh yeah, I made a different version when I was trying to decide whether to go lighter or darker. And I switched oh yeah, that's what it was. So I had mentioned to you that I had switched what I was doing originally. I still have the old one in here, which is, this is the piece with the foreground being light. So it goes from lightest to darker to the darkest. And in me revising the piece, I definitely feel like it is much better like this. I think everything reads more. And I will let you guys stare at that for a second while I blow my nose, because it's super windy out today and it's got my allergies going nuts. And it's super gross, but I gotta take care of the sinuses. Oh, it's kind of like the Muppet Show. I just kind of go down off screen, back up. As long as I'm doing that, might as well get a sip of coffee. Mm. Hmm. Let's see here. Oh, comments. Oh yeah, King's Little Fitness agrees in terms of the texture being repetitious, but he said not boring at all. Um, Says it's like a warm up that I need to practice doing more. You know, that's actually a good way to look at it. Doing things like that. For instance, I know Peter Han. Uh, One of the things that he does as a warm up is like he'll just have a whole page of a sketchbook and he'll just fill that with different sized circles and create like patterns of just this, because part of it is that drawing circles freehand, as we all know, it's actually pretty difficult. People think, oh wow, I couldn't even draw a circle. I'm like, yeah, circles are hard to draw, you know, and making an ellipse at the exact angle you want, very hard to draw. These are not easy things. It takes a lot of practice. I'm not great at it. But yeah, doing patterns, doing textures, doing hatchings, those are great ways to kind of get your hand up and running. Byron says, the joy of making lines. That's something we should all strive to gain. You know what? I wish I knew how to, I know how to encourage that joy, but I think that a lot of people mistake, there are people who are talented that just have a natural affinity for drawing and can do it better than other people. I don't have that. What I feel like I'm lucky to have is an enthusiasm for the process, so that anything that would be tedious, anything that might make someone say, "Oh, this sucks. This is so hard." I love those things. I love that part of the art making process, and that's what keeps me going. And whenever I can encourage people or talk enthusiastically about some of the difficult things, because there are definitely times when I didn't have all of that joy. For instance, figure drawing. Figure drawing is one of the things you've seen me talk about on the stream ad nauseum. You guys know I'm extremely passionate about it. I used to avoid figure drawing because I was better at drawing things out of my imagination. And when I looked at models in live classes and drew them, they came out horribly. I just was not good at it. My eye hand coordination, my sense of spatial relationships, distance and proportion visually was just horrible. And in my imagination, I could kind of make things feel like, oh, well, it's supposed to be that way. But in the end, it just wasn't good drawing. And what I found is I started taking figure drawing classes because I just wanted to make my personal work better. And over the course of doing it for a number of years, I started to really become enthusiastic about it, fall in love with it to the point where if I just could not do art for a living at all, I would still want to take figure drawing classes just for the joy of drawing from the human figure. I mean, honestly, I should be taking like, I don't know if they have plein air painting classes or whether people just go plein air painting and just see what comes out. I mean, I'm sure there are classes and instructors that take people out landscape painting. That's something I should do too. Point being is that drawing from the world around us, whether it's drawing landscapes, drawing animals, drawing people in a figure drawing session scenario, all of those things, I developed a love for it, for just looking and kind of like doing a puzzle, how you enjoy the challenge of that, or just playing a difficult video game. That's kind of how I feel about just the act of drawing and painting. Let's see here. Enough proselytizing, preaching, enough preaching. Byron says, looks like a heavy metal magazine cover. I will take that as high praise. I've got like a whole stack of heavy metal magazines from like the late 80s, early 90s. I got my parents to give me a subscription, and that's, one of the, if that's an influence on me, it definitely shows because they've got cool sci-fi, horror, sexy stuff. It's like heavy metal kind of had everything. So let's see here. Kingsville Fitness said, Irie. I'll take that. And Byron says I kind of like it, to be honest. I'm not sure if you're referring to the dark version versus the light version. Um, well, obviously I started with the dark version, so I didn't think it was a bad execution. But just over the course of doing this, I felt like the light one reads better in terms of expressing what I'm trying to express. Um, who knows? I've been known to do multiple versions of the same piece, which another thing, and I really got this from studying Peter Paul Rubens, but a lot of the old masters wouldn't just do a painting. They might do over the course of their career four or five, they might take 4 or 5 stabs at completed finished paintings of the same subject and kind of tweaking and modifying here and there. Like when they look, it's not even like they're doing the same subject, but a completely different composition. It's almost the same composition, but they'll take another shot and say, you know what? This looks better with this figure's arm raised instead of lowered. This looks better with them wearing a cape instead of a robe. This looks better with, just changing different details. They're like, you know what? I'm gonna put a dog over here in this corner instead of having a pig or instead of it being empty. Like they're just tweaking it, trying to perfect it. And I've learned it might seem kind of crazy because of how long it takes, well, for me to make art, but the idea that we expect to get it right the first time is kind of arrogant. It really is. The same way that you hope that in doing a sketch and doing studies, you'll work out all of the visual problems in your piece before you start. But as you go in, you'll find, like I found, that my value key was wrong. And who knows, when I go in and start doing color on top of this, I might find out that there's other things that I should have done. And it's worthwhile, instead of trying to tweak and get that piece until you get it to perfect, to just continue with the version you've got. And then when you get to the end, say, all right, I made a completed version that's this. Let me try making a completed version that's something else. Now with digital, I can just go back a few, delete the layers that don't have what I want, still have a strong base to work on. But I think you learn a lot by going through and doing different versions of a piece that's completed. Let's see here. Amar mentions he's at the Pep Boys waiting to get tires installed. He says, such a ripoff. Tires are too expensive now. Byron also chimes in. He says, everything is too expensive now. It's like, well, hell, that inflation's out of control. Let's see here. Damn. $650 to $1,000 for 4 tires. That is some highway robbery. I mean, $650 for 4 tires is actually pretty reasonable. But, as you get up in that, what's weird is most of the times I've found getting tires, it tends to be $100 to $200 per tire. So to be honest, $650 is a good deal. $800 is probably average. $1,000 is kind of high. I'm not saying that I want you to get gouged. I do not. It sucks. It's a big hit to take. And usually they do give you a good deal when you're getting 4. But also, I don't like Pep Boys. I have never liked Pep Boys. Pep Boys might be the only local place for you to get. And if you're listening to this, not on headphones, then you see people turn around looking like, why is he talking shit about Pep Boys? No, I'm just, every time I've gone to my local Pep Boys in California, because out there might be a solid crew, but my Pep Boys have not done great work. Shoddy work at a high price. So I'm not a fan of them in general and try to avoid going to them. But you're there now, you get your tires. What else can you do? But in the future, I'd say, look at some other chain. Like, for instance, Firestone has always done me well. But that's neither here nor there. Mercidian Merchant, this isn't card talk. This isn't Click and Clack, the Tappet brothers. Mercidian Merchant says, may I share some art that I instigated? Yes, as a matter of fact, I will I'll take a look. Let me you know what? I don't know if I can open Twitch on this thing or not. Maybe I can. Well, you know what? Hang on, I have to log in. We're not going to do that right now. Let's go back to that. I'll check it out separately on on my desktop computer here. But yeah, definitely, please go ahead and share some stuff. Um, Kingslow Fitness says that's why I'm doing Uber Eats on a bicycle, not electric. The repetition of the legs is crazy. You know, honestly, I don't go cycling like I used to, but that used to be my main exercise was going biking 3 times a week. I figure you're making money and getting exercise. You do put in that strong cardio. You know what? It's going to pay you back over time, not just financially, but the fact that you're taking care of your health by doing that. So it's good. I'm happy to hear it. Yeah, Amar says sounds intense. Spell that. Yeah, we don't need to get up to the into all of my snot and such. Let's see here. Merkidian Merchant says, "Let that sin, Jeremy be." Let's see here. Amar says, "Draw a square first, divided into quarters, and you have a perfect circle." That is very true. If you for those who haven't seen this trick before, let me just open a different document so I don't have to delete anything out of that one or erase. But yeah, if you just freehand draw a square, I mean, oh wow, okay, brush is huge again. You know what? I'm just gonna leave it because I don't feel like messing with my brush sizes. I'm just gonna have to use a very delicate touch. But if you take a square, and I know I could just hold and Procreate and have it straighten the brush, straighten the lines automatically if I'm trying to do it freehand. That gives you, like, if you just draw a nice smooth arc, this is a very bad circle. It's easier if I'm drawing smaller. Or it's easier if I'm drawing standing up so I can use my whole arm. But where this method really shines that Amar mentioned is when you're drawing a square at an angle. So if I draw like this, like let's say I'm drawing a tabletop and I want it to be a round table, you just divide that into 4 equal sections and you can create a smooth arc. And that helps you to draw a circle, an ellipse in perspective. So you can draw a tabletop that way, or let's say that you're drawing a car, you just make a square that's in the same proportion as the entire, like if the entire vehicle, as a matter of fact, let's do that, do this. Let's say the entire car is like this. Like that's the side of the car. You can come in here and draw a square and then divide that square like we were talking about. Although actually, okay, I'm being OCD about this, but I'm looking at this, I'm saying, well, really, that square should be down here, and you can use the bottom of the chassis as the center line. But because the axle would be going through here. And then again, I'm drawing too thick. Gotta thin up those lines. Point being that that's a way to use a square to draw wheels. Well, to draw ellipses. The the square method that Amar mentioned. So little ellipse tool, little ellipse tip, ellipse tips, because my corny ass loves some alliteration. Ellipse tips right there. Let's see here. I might be getting behind in the chat. Let's see here. Mercidian Merchant says the Scream by Monk was drawn like 17 times. A fake. Oh, Kingslow Fitness said eerie, scary when it was darker. Well, you know what? Like I said, it might be worth it for me to go back and give it another shot and try it as something that's darker and creepier. Hang on, I'm gonna flip over. Mercidian Merchant, let me know if you want me to put the images on screen and share with the rest of the stream, the pieces that you shared with me. I'm flipping over to Twitch now to grab them. Let's see here. I love how it's got a thing telling me, hey, you're live right now. Let's see here. Hang in there. We're loading your activity. All right, here we go. Here we go. And I see you say that the second one is a little spicy. Let's see. Oh, this is nice. Hmm. So it says drawn by let's see. Burial at Sea Elizabeth. Heh. It's cool. It's weird flipping over to Twitch and seeing myself looking at stuff. Ah, that's not so spicy. That's perfectly fine. Well, yeah, on the on back on the car talk, Amar says Pep was the only thing open today. Wanted to use Firestone. Couldn't wait till tomorrow. And Kingslow Fitness says I practice the ghosting method at times to get a circle or square. Saying I would mix the messy lines around and eventually capture the final or workaround. Well, you know, it is challenging. Like I said, drawing freehand drawing circles. But even for me, when I draw a circle, I tend to draw either in two pieces. So I'll either draw one half of the arc and then the other half of the arc, or if it's a larger one, I'll draw one arc and I'll draw the opposite arc and then come the other way. So it's like I'm making it out of two lines or four lines. That tends to be how I make them. And even this, like you can see, it's pretty rough. And depending on the angle you're doing it, it can be very, very challenging. Like if I were to try and do this like with a very narrow ellipse, I'll do like an arc that way, an arc this way, and then have the other one be like an arch that comes down, this one, an arch that comes up the other way. See, that's one of those where I would end up probably drawing that 2 or 3 times. Maybe this time I would say, let me draw that angled hook a little bit better. Start with the part that's harder. And this is just hard to do with the brush as thick as it is without changing the size that I'm doing. But I find that gives me better results than doing the, what is it? The little small lines that way. I mean, you can kind of build up a drawing like this. And first off, I've seen lots of artists that produce great work building up little lines like this. But the thing is at a certain point, when you go to clean it up, you still have to zoom in and make one long, smooth line over those tiny lines. So there's still a point at which you have to develop that ability to unify all of them into one smooth arc. If it always stays like very small little lines, it'll always feel kind of broken up. Let's see here. Hey, I see Martin in the chat. Hey. How you doing, man? Thanks for rolling in. We're kind of doing a little bit of a hodgepodge. You know, I've been drawing snake scales, but then we started talking process and ellipses and different pieces, and you know how we do. We just go free flow. But I'm gonna share some work from Rakidian Merchant in a second. Let me just swing over to folder where I saved them. Well, that's odd. For some reason, the other one didn't seem to save. But yeah, here's the belly dancer, which I think is a quite nice piece. Nice with the top, the bikini top made from seashells. Nice hair. Nice nice flowing gown. I like this. I like the pose. I like the character. This is really nice. Good work. And I definitely like the color scheme. The cool blues with the magentas coming in there. Very nice piece. Yeah, for some reason the other one didn't save, and I don't know why, but I could spend time trying to figure that out, or I could keep drawing. Let's see here. Byron says, I tend to sculpt my lines instead, build up through multiple light circles, and then erase what I need. Amar says, another easy way to freehand a circle is to rest your palm or arm on the table and then rotate your wrist. You know what's funny? That was something, when I had mentioned that idea in the Discord server when I was talking to Kingslow Fitness, that whole idea of using the natural arc of your arm. I don't know how many of you rotate your screen so that you can get the nice angle you want. I don't rotate it when I'm doing my rough sketches, but when I'm cleaning something up, like if I wanted to clean up this arc, I would rotate it. Instead of trying to clean up the arc like this, I would rotate it like this, specifically so that my natural arc of my arm just goes shh, and I can kind of use that natural arc of movement to get a, even that's still not super fluid, but it's smoother than that initial drawing. So whether you're rotating your actual page, if you're drawing physically, like when I'm inking, I'm constantly spinning the page around. That's something I learned from my buddy Carl Altstetter. Definitely rotating the page. But when I work digitally, I definitely will rotate the canvas to get lines, to get arcs that I want. Um, let's see here. Yeah, Amar says to create an arc in 90 or 180 degrees. And Kingslow Fitness says, you haven't seen my past art pieces, mostly on paper. And he says, time to go old school for a minute and trace what I drew. In addition to getting better with my line work digitally, my life is chaos. And that's what you see in a sense, as I draw fast and furious at times. Well, you know, that's the thing. I think your sketches have a lot. We're talking now about stuff that we share on the Discord server for the rest of you guys. For the rest of you non-patrons, hint, hint, wink, wink. But I think you have a great amount of energy in your sketches. I think that they really do capture you exploring and studying forms and volumes. The only thing that I'm recommending is that cleaning up those sketches helps solidify your understanding of those ideas, because it's one thing to be able to roughly sketchily build up something that's kind of in the shape of the form you're doing. It's another thing to be able to draw in a couple of lines the overall form. And I think that it will help you over the long term. Instead of drawing several lines to build up making a cube, if you can simply just draw the 6 lines that'll make up, or not 6 lines, but you can draw like 4 lines to make up one plane, and then 4 lines to make up the next plane, then 4 lines to make up the other plane, like the 3 different planes of a cube that are facing you. If you can do those in just a couple of few lines, that will allow you to express whatever you want to draw quicker. The fewer lines you can use to do it, the easier it will be for you to block in a thing or describe how a form turns. It's not that every single drawing has to be cleaned up that way. Even when I'm doing a drawing, I'll tend to draw it over, instead of one long curve, I may make 3 lines to make a curve. But 3 lines to make a curve is one thing. Drawing 8 or 10 or 12 lines to make a curve, the quality of that line will be visible in that it will feel kind of broken up. It won't feel solid. And what I'm encouraging is trying to reach towards solid drawing. Doesn't mean that it has to all be one fluid line, but to use fewer lines and to take one of your, because like I said, your sketches have a ton of energy in them. To take one of those sketches and then just, like I mentioned in those notes, is to just lower the opacity, create a new layer, and draw a more solid version of that on top. That level of refinement, you'll see that pushing that drawing, those rough sketches further, refining them, that will help you improve. And it's not easy. It will feel awkward and they'll come out looking ugly the first several times you do it. But I encourage you only because if you can push against that, it's like maxing out on the weight bench. You can feel yourself pushing against the limits of your skills and you'll be like, I'm doing this and I'm not satisfied with it. It's not coming out right and it feels awkward. But to quote the great John Smith, track and field coach, he was my coach in college. I remember one time we were in practice and one of the guys, he was telling them, pick your feet up, go keep your chest up, upright, lift your feet, keep your feet forward, don't let your feet drop behind. And one of the guys was saying, well, I understand what you're saying and how you're trying to correct our form, but when I do that, it feels uncomfortable. It feels awkward, because one of the guy I was talking to was saying, like, the way that he runs, the way he moves his body, is like, that's what feels comfortable to me. And he said words that I have never forgotten, which is why I'm telling them to you now. He said, good form is uncomfortable. Good form is uncomfortable. Drawing something to a higher degree, executing at a higher degree, it's not easy. And the people who make it look easy are just people who have gotten really good at doing it. But there's never a point, like I've listened to enough interviews with very experienced artists, our favorite comic artists, our famous concept artists, our famous fantasy artists. And there's a reason why those guys are so humble. They're humble because it hasn't gotten easier. They've gotten good at doing the hard thing, but that doesn't make the hard thing easy. Like when I'm sitting here and I'm drawing all these snakes and, drawing all these scales and working this out, it may look like, oh, Jeremy's got a great sense of form. Um, no, I'm just busting my ass to try and make the thing look good, but I definitely still haven't mastered it. What I am able to do is from hard work, not from me mastering it. Um, that's poorly expressed, but what I'm trying to say is the things that are worthwhile to do tend to be difficult. Not always. Not always. You don't always have to beat yourself over the head. Not everything you do creatively has to be something where you're fighting uphill battles. There's definitely times when you shouldn't fight uphill battles. But for the most part, quality doesn't always, quality tends to be something you have to work for. And when I talk about quality, I'm not saying good art or bad art. I'm talking about like line quality, like making a line that feels like a solid, fluid line versus a line that feels sketchier. And that said, if you want your work to feel sketchy, you can always choose to draw things with a light, sketchy line. There's definitely times when I do stuff that's looser and lighter. Like when we go back and look, if you compare this piece that I'm working on right now to, say, this piece, obviously, very loose, very sketchy. Yes, it's painterly, but it's a loose, sketchy piece in comparison to a lot of my other work. And this was me trying to explore doing more sketchy work. Um, but the difference is that it's a choice. It's me doing it as an approach versus me doing it and not necessarily having mastered the form enough to be able to draw a cleaned up version of that. And in fact, I want to go back and do a more cleaned up version of that piece because now in doing this really does feel like what I enjoy. But by the same token, I want to do another version of this that is like no line art and just all tones, all paints, all volumes. So I get it when you say that you draw fast and furious when you're sketching. That fury is a good thing. That's energy. That's power, and it's good that you're putting power and energy into your sketches. Um, but like Bruce Lee, you want to be like water. You want to be able to have that power. You want to be able to channel the power. You don't want it to be uncontrolled. You know, there's a flow to it, and you want to go with that flow, but you want to be able to control it. Let's see here. Amar says confidence is shown in the way you lay lines down. Seasoned artists and animators are really conservative with their use of lines. I'm like, well, that's because they're producing. they're getting paid by old school animators are getting paid by the foot of frames of film that they produced. You know, they had to produce a certain number of. I think it was 8 feet of film per week. So they were drawn fast and loose because they was just trying to make that money. Which again, Jack Kirby, the whole thing about him and his incredible speed, being able to draw like, 8 pages of comics a day. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe he drove that. He drew that fast. But when you read interviews about him, he's just trying to put food on the table for his family, and if they're only getting paid like $20 a page, $50 a page, then he's like, all right, well, my family got to eat. So it's like, well, then I'm gonna draw 8 pages because that's what I need in order to put food on the table. You know, he was literally drawing rent. I like that idea. It's like, what's it on your drawing table? Rent. He's making that money. All right, so y'all got me all riled up. I was on a rant. All right. And we're getting to the top of the hour here. So I'll go for a little bit more. But if anybody has some final questions they want to ask, now is a good time because we'll be wrapping up here in a few minutes. I'm looking over this because I'm trying to decide where are the places where I was like really unhappy and wanted to go back and redraw. Because with a little bit of retrospect, I'm looking at this and I'm not as bothered as I was previously. There were some of these scale patterns that weren't working for me, and now just having a little time to look back, I'm like, you know what? They aren't perfect, but changing them would be nitpicking. Whereas before I was like, oh, there's some places here I definitely need to go back and fix. This is the opposite. I've had a little time and a little space. And I'm like, okay, I can live with this. So as much as I joke about being a perfectionist, and Amar will call me out on my perfectionist tendencies, I do have the capacity to look at something and say, it's all right, I can let it go. So for now, I'm going to leave those things as is. And a reminder to the Patreon subscribers that tomorrow will be art book study group, and I will post a I'll post a reminder on Patreon, and I'll post a link in the Discord server for the voice channel. So as opposed to just leaving comments on the in the chat, which you're welcome to do also, but you will have the option of hopping onto the voice channel and just talking directly, so we can have a conversation like normal human beings. So that will be tomorrow, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you are busy, don't sweat it, because that replay will always be available. And you're always welcome to leave comments on the videos if there's things that I touch on that you want to talk about further. And you know what? That's even true for the public videos. If you guys see a live stream that I do, and later on you're like, hey, I have a thought about this, or I think he was wrong about that, or I mean, not that I'm encouraging you to argue with me, because that's not really, it's not really the vibe. This isn't a art theory battle school, but anytime you guys have feedback, I try to answer all of the comments. I miss some sometimes, and I apologize for that. Sometimes I'll see a comment on there and I'm like, damn, 16 weeks ago. And I feel like I'm an ass for missing it. But I try to respond to comments on the videos as well. So if you see stuff, if you're missing the original and you're catching the replay, please comment, and I will do my best to reply. And Mercidian Merchant, thank you again for sharing your work. So were those pieces commissions, or were you doing character designs for one of your characters or a friend's character? See here, Byron says it's a reinforcing cycle as well. You draw fast, you end up becoming a faster drawer. It's very true. Although I have found that as I've gotten older, I have slowed down, but I'm slowing down not because I want to draw slow, but because I catch more things that I need to fix. And I think I go through phases, because another thing my buddy Carl says is like first you get good, then you get fast, then you get good and fast. Um, and for me, a lot of the getting, I'm focusing on improving my game, like just improving my skills, which I guess is the getting good part. And I found that that's where I really slow down a lot is because I'm looking for things, and that's where my perfectionism comes from. I am looking for things that can be better. And as you improve, you find more mistakes. You see more places where you're like, I could have tried harder, I could have refined this better. It's not as clear as it should be. And right now, I'm in a stage where almost everything I draw, I see places where it can be improved. So that doesn't mean that I want to stay at this speed forever and that I want to be this nitpicky forever. It's more of I'm in a phase of refinement. And we go through different phases as artists. It's not like you just draw the way you draw. Some people maybe do, but for me, I find that at different phases in my life, I've been very fast and loose. There's times when I've been very controlled and methodical. There's times when I've been very attentive to anatomy. There's been times when my anatomy has just been atrocious. There's times when I've been very, very creative and innovative. And then there's times when I've been very much like, it's just the ideas aren't important. I'm just working on improving my rendering and draftsmanship. We don't always stay the same artist throughout our entire process. The same way that people grow and change throughout their lives, the type of artist we are grows and changes. I mean, hell, there's people who spend their lives, Sargent spent a lot of time as a John Singer Sargent spent a lot of time as a portrait artist, and then eventually was just like, you know what? I just want to draw landscapes. I want to draw people no more. I want to do commissions no more. I mean, he still continued to do commissions throughout his life, but he definitely made a large shift later in his life towards landscape painting, and that's what seemed to bring him a lot of joy. I guess because, well, I think for a lot of people, I've heard from a lot of artists that when you do commissions, particularly portraits, you go through phases where it's like all you get are complaints. It's just no matter what you do, you're trying to make the client happy, and they're just not happy with it. And at a certain point, you're like, you know what? I want to, a mountain doesn't complain if I didn't get something right or a tree is off. There's something very peaceful about that because we're hard enough on ourselves in terms of what we want to be right, what feels good or bad to us in artwork. We don't need somebody else piling on top of that. Let's see here. So I think I'm going to wrap it up here for today. And, we got a chance to look at some ellipses and box and square drawings. Didn't make a ton of progress on this one today, but I had fun with it. And who knows? I'm going to maybe try and work on this during the week and see if I can get to the color stage next weekend. Right there, I just tried filling in that eye to see if I would like how that looked, and I did not like how it looked filled in. And that's some of these eyes look good with whoops, weird line. Some of these eyes look good with completely filled in with shadow, and then some of them don't. I tried that up there, didn't work. This one is in light, but it's still kind of like the shading kind of follows that of as if even though it's a line, it's treating it like I was shading a sphere. So, all right. Amar says, I can draw fast and I was getting good, but since it was never my profession, I found ways to be lazy and not push myself as I should. Well, it depends. Not, some of the most creative people aren't necessarily the best draftsmanship. So I strive for draftsmanship, but that's because that's what I enjoy. Some people are great with color, some people are great with tones, some people are great with visual storytelling. Um, I mean, I talk about all these ways to improve and to push your draftsmanship because that's the path that I'm on. But I recognize that all of us as artists walk our own individual paths. And I think it's worthwhile to take a cup, take a sip from someone else's cup to say, all right, I might be all about the draftsmanship, but let me take a sip from the color tone, from the color cup. Let me take a sip from the cup of someone who is just being expressive and loose and not even necessarily worried about draftsmanship, just bloopy shapes and how things feel. And there's all different ways of approaching making art. And in the end, there might be a right way to be an illustrator. There might be a better way, a proper way to be a concept artist or a game designer. There might be proper ways to be an animator. But when it comes to art with a capital A, there really are no rules. So, and I think that you can always find something from someone else's discipline that you can reach out and touch and find something that you can come back and bring to your own practice, to the things that you generally do want to do. And you can make your own work more enriching by taking a sip from someone else's cup. So Kingslow Fitness says, I say being on the criticism. Yeah, being all about it. I try to take in feedback and see where I can use that to improve my own work. Again, studying with Carl Ganas, one of the best things that I think he ever taught me was how to analyze. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, but one of the big things he tries to teach is how to criticize and analyze your own work, because when you can look at it and find the mistakes, you can do that before showing it to anyone else. And that's not to say that I've eliminated all the flaws in my work. It means that if I've eliminated all the flaws that I can find, that's when I take it to someone at a high level and say, all right, here, you show me what I don't see. You show me what I'm missing. I mean, there's no point in me bringing flawed work. If I know there's certain mistakes in it, if I know the anatomy's off, if I know the proportion's wrong, if I know that the head volumes don't feel right, then why am I going to go waste the time of somebody who knows better and ask them to show me my work if I already know what's wrong? I need to fix the things that I see first and then take it to someone who has a better eye and can show me things that I missed. And that's also something we talk about Kingslow Fitness. Sometimes he's looked at my work and he's caught things. He has a great eye. He may not necessarily have the draftsmanship to draw things exactly the way he wants to draw them, but there's times when he's looked at my work on the Discord server and said, hey man, I noticed this and I noticed that. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. You have a great eye. And that's a superpower, man. The fact that you have a great eye, you can use that to help keep your own work growing. So, and I appreciate that. Feedback can come from everywhere. So, on that note, as I mentioned, tomorrow, Art Book Study Group, 7:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And that is for people who are Patreon subscribers. For as little as $2 a month, you get access to 2 sessions that are 2.5, 3-hour long sessions. We call it Art Book Study Group, where we dig into some of the best art books around, try to suck out all the knowledge we can. And there's a huge backlog. I think there's like 60 videos. There's 60 videos that are available that are each 2 to 3 hours long. Some are a little bit longer. You also get access to a digital archive of my comic books you can read online. You get access to a Patreon exclusive Discord server. That's all for as little as $2 a month. There's higher tiers for more interaction, more rewards, but $2 a month gets you in. You can sign up for just 1 month just to try it out, see if you like it or not. No harm, no foul. If you hop in and say, not for me, hop back out again. Links in the description. If you're watching on Twitch, links on the About Me page, or the About Me tab. Head on over and check that out. I've got a free monthly newsletter. When you sign up, you get a free digital sketchbook. The newsletter has work in progress animated GIFs of works I'm working on, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively. You can get all of that and more. Head on over to newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase some physical books, or if you read digitally on Comixology or Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, I Have the Gods. It's a standalone graphic novel, psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can pick up books like my most recent series, Morning Star. It's an 8-issue series telling Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8. Both volumes have extensive back matter, script excerpts, character thumbnails, page layouts, photo reference, and more. I basically show you how I put together the whole comic. You can check all of that out. And on the YouTube homepage, there's book flip-throughs of those books. So you can check that out, see what's inside before you buy. All right, guys, again, thank you so much for all the conversation, all the feedback. It's always fun, inspiring, interesting. Love talking to you guys. That's it for now. Go be creative.